Radio Shack is coming back. It may or may not look like we used to know it, but they have been purchased by a new vendor, and they are going to make their way back onto the scene with brick-and-mortar stores in the USA. Check this out. So this is another story article that I found about hobby radio. Radio Shack is coming back, but in what form? I actually found the article on 3 different websites, and I think this was written up in the best way, or at least it's most to my liking. This comes from thestreet.com, and I'll share a link in the description below. Okay, and they talk about how Coke and Pepsi have done some relaunches of old brands in the past. So then they get down. Radio Shack went through multiple bankruptcies. While the brand shuttered thousands of locations, it actually had about 7,000 locations across the USA at its peak. And it never really fully shut down. There's still Radio Shacks around the country in various places. You might have one near you. Let me know if you have a Radio Shack that's near you. And if you go in there and talk to them, they're probably going to tell you it's a franchise store, not a corporate store. But this article says it never fully went away. In the U.S., a few hundred franchises continued on, as did franchise owners around the world.
Why does Radio Shack ask for your phone number when you buy batteries? I don't know.
The biggest franchise operator of the brand was an El Salvador-based Unicommer Group. That's the name of the company, Unicommer, and has now acquired the company. It has big plans to not only revamp its website, but also build back its brick-and-mortar presence in the USA. Good deal, okay. Radio Shack's new owner plans to add more merchandise for its current franchisees to be able to stock, and it plans an Amazon storefront as well as new physical locations for the once ubiquitous chain at its peak, as pretty much everywhere, 7,000 stores globally. Okay, I said across the USA, it's 7,000 stores globally. The new owners plan to lean into offerings that differentiate the brand. Best Buy and chains like Target and Walmart sell a lot of electronics. Best Buy, I guess, sort of makes sense, although they're not. You go into Best Buy and you see a bunch of TVs and washing machines. I mean, I haven't been into a Best Buy in a while, but that's pretty much what I even see. Target and Walmart is just kind of a conglomerate store. They sell pretty much everything. Of course, Walmart has a really big online presence. Quote, private label offerings, including drones, headphones, radios, and adapters, were strongly emphasized pre-bankruptcy to offset the margin pressure, a push expected to be continued under the new owners. A Retail Wire reported, which is another article right here. So there's a good storefront shot of Radio Shack, Retail Wire. I'll go ahead and I read through this article and I like this one from the Street better, but I'll link both of these into the description below. Does the market need Radio Shack back? So one of the things, so I want to touch on this radios thing real quick. It might be talking about an AM/FM radio or like an alarm clock radio. They used to sell alarm clock radios. A couple of their brands that you might recognize is Realistic. They used to make car stereo stuff under Realistic. There were some of the HTX 202 that were stamped Radio Shack at the top and some that were stamped Realistic at the top. In fact, this is stamped Realistic at the top right here. This is a Radio Shack brand. This is not my original HTX 202, although I do own it. But this was the first, not this specific one, but this was the first model of ham radio that I ever bought right after getting my license. So Realistic is one of their brands. They've got some pro scanner stuff. You used to be able to buy scanners at Radio Shack for NASCAR races. You could buy like pre-programmed scanners to listen to the pit crew. They were just scanners that didn't transmit, but you could listen to the pit crew. You could listen to AM receive for air traffic frequencies and air traffic of radio transmissions over the air. So maybe they'll have some of that back and maybe not. So what do they mean by radios in this article right here? Not necessarily two-way radios. It doesn't say two-way radios. It says radios. And I certainly hope that it's two-way radios. I would love to see the HTX series of radios come back. You know, we used to have the HTX 202 and the HTX 404, the 2-meter single band, the 2-meter and the 440 single band. There was an HTX 10, which was a really nice mobile 10-meter only radio. There were a few others in there, but the closest one, the first dual band they ever did, I think was an HTX 420 or 402. Was it 420? I wonder what the guy who named that model was thinking. But, you know, I bought one of those used on eBay several years ago, and I used it for about a year, and I sold it. I didn't like it. It was a lot smaller. It wasn't nearly as robust as its predecessors, the 202 and the 404. So I do have a couple of the HTX 212 monoband 45-watt mobile 2-meter only radios. That was the first mobile radio that I ever bought. So unknown if they're actually going to have two-way radios or some sort of ham radio or even CB radio. They were really big in the CBs back in the day. The article continues, Radio Shack went out of business because Amazon, and to a lesser extent Best Buy, made its selection less unique. So you used to be able to buy trinkets and parts and processors and resistors, transistors, fuses, all kinds of good stuff at Radio Shack. As smartphones became common, chargers and accessories basically became commodities, which squeezed margins and forced Radio Shack into bankruptcy. And again, the article says they went through bankruptcy twice. 2 different times they went through bankruptcy. Now, you have to wonder, and the article goes on to talk about this here in a minute, so I'm going to read you the bottom part of the article, and I'm really curious to see what you guys think about that. But before that, I mean, how many of you actually still buy parts and processors, and no, not processors, but like resistors, transistors, fuses, microfarads, and all that kind of good stuff? What ferrite beads and toroids and all that kind of good stuff. There's a company called Mauser that is pretty good. They're down here in Texas, and I know they ship nationwide. But where would you go? One of the places you can always go to get all kinds of custom-made parts and boards and CNC machining and other stuff is PCBWay.com. PCBWay.com is sponsoring this video. They are a supporter of this channel, and I thank them for that. You can always get 3D printed materials. You can get CNC printed materials. All you got to do is bring your ideas to life. You send them files, and they kind of work on it for you, and then you can get them to actually physically make you a professional-grade part for whatever project you're working on. They do printed circuit boards, flexible circuit boards, 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds of circuit boards. So if you want to build your own kit, you can do that as well. Check the link in the description below for PCBWay.com. And if you go there and place an order, be sure to tell them that Ham Radio 2.0 sent you. Thank you for supporting this channel. The article goes on to say that the competition has only gotten more intense and does leave questions as to whether there's a need for the chain to grow its brick and mortar presence. I'll be honest with you, I order a lot of stuff on Amazon, and it's not just because Amazon is so great. I mean, Amazon is great, and I have Amazon links that I share with you guys all the time, but it's easy. You know, most days I don't need something like right now. If I order it on Amazon, I can get it sometimes same day, sometimes next day, 2 days at the longest usually, and unless there's an emergency or something, then I can drive up the street and get something maybe. But 1 to 2 days shipping on Amazon is pretty easy to get. So I just order all my stuff on Amazon. So I hope, and now Radio Shack, they're going to do an Amazon, said they're going to do an Amazon store. Great. So maybe we can order some Radio Shack stuff on Amazon. I certainly hope that they will get back into the two-way radio business, whether it be CB. GMRS is pretty hot right now. It'd be really fun to see some Radio Shack GMRS radios. Have they ever made GMRS? I know they made like Businessman and FRS stuff at one point in time. Does anyone know if they ever made MERS or GMRS radios? GMRS wasn't nearly as big back when Radio Shack was big as GMRS is today, but we'll see. A major comeback in the U.S. will be extremely challenging. The electronics market has thin margins, loads of competition, and because the products are very similar from retailer to retailer, it can be hard to differentiate. I always hear from my ham radio retail partners that there are thin margins in electronics. Yes, that is very true. This was Global Data Retail Division Managing Director Neil Saunders that told Retail Wire, that other website I shared a minute ago. As such, I struggle to see a new pathway to success, especially in the current market where electronics sales remain firmly in the doldrums, okay? And then another person is quoted, Gary Sankari, who has 50 years in the retail business, has had less kind comments. I can't see any scenario where this works in the United States. The market for private label electronics is small. Ham radio. Okay, yeah, it is. You're right. But they could do it right if stores like Better Safe Radio and 2 or 3 of the other ones out there buy two-way radios, you know, they could do it right if they really wanted to, especially if they made their own product, I think. The market for electronics components, which I do miss, he says, is even smaller these days. No one fixes anything anymore. That's true. Yeah, that's true. No one fixes anything anymore. So what do you think? What do you think? Do you think there's a need for Radio Shack to come back? If they did come back, would you shop there? Do you think they should make two-way radios? And I'm not just talking about him. I would love to see a new version of this guy with some bells and whistles. Here's an idea. Here's something I'm going to say to Radio Shack out loud that we have not seen from any other radio manufacturer. Not even the Chinese markets are doing this right now. Create a mobile radio that's dual band all mode. Create a mobile radio that's 2 meters and 440, similar to your HTX 420. I hope that's the right number. Similar to yours, but that's, and it doesn't even have to be full power. 25, 30 watts, it would be fine. That's dual band, single sideband, CW, FM, AM, digital modes. Create an all mode dual band ham radio because nobody else is doing it right now. 10 meters is hot right now. We're coming to the top of the solar cycle. Another 10 meter radio would be fun to see. Of course, it's going to take several years in development to get all this done, so I don't know. It may be too late for that. But what would you like to see from Radio Shack? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think you would shop there? If they open one down the street for me, I would definitely go there and check it out. In fact, I'd do a video tour of it. There's a huge market right now for GMRS, MERS radios, CB radios even. I think they could do it. It's just a matter of how willing they are.